Yeah, more reminder, Engage Brookings is a great place because, in today's technology, when someone does put an idea on that board, I get an email right away. And so realize that that's an instant communication to us. Plus, it allows other people to start to chime in, and there's actually a point system on. I'd say that's one of the number one things is to engage with us. That's what we need. Don't be afraid to call us. I think sometimes there's a fear of calling public officials, but we need to hear from you. Email, all these methods work, and you can still come to a council meeting. Sorry that you kind of when we have to do our business, but that's what we need from you mostly is engagement, and in those engagements, probably the number one thing is ideas, because you got 7 people up on the council, and look how many people we have here. So ideas can be generated from a larger group. Now can you hear me? There you go. Sorry. Wonder how I did that. At least I'm not talking into it. I've seen people do that like it's a walkie-talkie. So the retail grant program, the council has allocated money towards it, and as I was saying before, this is another place where we turn it over to business owners to say this is how that money should be used. But the idea is to help some retail business get started, and our idea, and again the BEDC has to finalize this on how it's going to be handled, is to try to promote getting businesses started downtown. We know that it can be real tough in getting the funds together, and this could be used for some startup funds that have to do with getting your display set up, those kind of things. So again, this is a place where the city has funds. We know that downtown is important. We really kind of have to work with the BEDC. So if you're thinking you need funds for a business, this is one of those feedback points. Hey, when I got my business started, or while I'm trying to get it started, here's where I'm having issues. And obviously this is where it became very important to get involved with it because she's been through the process. So money's available to start a retail business downtown. We haven't allocated any funds directly for sustainability. But what we have going on, I think it was about 2 years ago, I put forth an initiative to start a sustainability council. And there's a place where another one of those, there's too many to write down and tell you about where you can really affect how this community looks. And that actually is one of the largest. If you're thinking about getting involved with sustainability and how you interact with the city, I would go on to the cityofbrookings.org, look up the Sustainability Committee, and there's a very well done, thorough report on indicators of what we want to try to affect in Brookings. Pick that report up, start going through it, and look at places where you or your business can help out, and then generate those ideas back to us. That was the whole idea of that report, is that we gave you kind of the framework of where we'd like to make some changes in Brookings that we're measuring, and if you could actually go in and say, this is where we can be effective. We've mailed that report out to all businesses in town, or major businesses in town. It's a little tough to do everybody. Also the university. Oh yeah, thank you. I didn't know they did these. That's great. You can go directly to sustainbrookings.com, and that'll actually take you to the same place I told you. So sustainbrookings.com will bring you to that site too, that you can download the report. And of course, this is one of those places where having the community to keep pushing the arts. I think what we have to do as the city is expand where the arts can be. We've always supported the old Carnegie Library, that's just kitty corner from this museum, is a city facility. And so we've always been supportive that way with facilities, and I think we got to think bigger in the facility where more people can interact. And where can we have a space that somebody that has either a product idea or even more something just selling arts, where's a place that they can go and work on those projects, and then also if there could be some sort of a retail area. I love the makers idea that's going on at Wooden Legs, and I don't know if we can serve beer at this place. You can serve beer down there, so Wooden Legs would probably be a more popular place to go. But no, we need to fill space so we can continue to always have a place to buy goods. And of course, we got to bring down that barrier of what it costs to get started with something like this. Okay, so let's start with architecture in Brookings. Thank goodness we're getting an architect, or we have, I shouldn't say getting, we have an architecture school now at SDSU. I think that's good for the city and for South Dakota, because now we have architects, several more architects in town that we can, I'm going to use the term use. I know you guys, you have your own businesses and stuff to do work, but to have that kind of input is very important. A good example of that, and I'm going just a little bit another direction because I'm going to go back to one of my committees. The Historic Preservation Committee needs architects, and so it's been really great to have an architectural program here so we can have more architects. Obviously, if we don't have that many architectural businesses here in town, and if we can reach into the instructors at the school level, it's a great way of growing that committee. So, to your question of how we get involved with that, this space that we've been talking about, the first question, that's the kind of group that needs to come together for this space. I don't think I'm going to be able to turn this over to the Parks and Recs department or all these standard ways of kind of doing it. This has to be a building that's built by the people that will use it. Not built, because we probably have to maybe look at a different area of that building we're going into or something, but it needs to be created by the people that are going to use it. And so I think, how do you get involved? We need to start getting you involved in this kind of a process. That's my answer back on that. We have to look different at our committees. We have to look different at the structure of government, so we're not just handing this off to the standard board and then it comes and it goes through them. And I think we need to be able to get more people involved in that kind of a process. So we don't have a good way yet, but I realize it's important. The whole makers movement is something really, really interesting that we have to continue to work on. And in that space, literally, is from my understanding, and Let's in Brookings create it the way we want to create it. I listened to several people that are involved with the makerspace, a huge one that has the involvement of GE Appliance and stuff down in Louisville, Kentucky. And there they even recommended, you got to use the assets that are in your community. So if we create a space that's a maker space, let's define what makers are to us in this community. But what it is you need to have the tools there, and a good example in a lot of places are 3D printers. The ability to kind of come up with a product idea and print it on the spot. We need a very easy place to do that. We have that technology in Brookings. Falcon Plastics has been doing it for years. So we have those resources that we can use that we need to bring in. The other thing in a maker's area is other tools, and that always gets to be pretty difficult when you start talking about power tools and stuff. But the concept of tools that you can use to make things. And then another interesting thing you need is a boneyard. Just places where you push a bunch of stuff that people haven't used that people can go through and use. So that's kind of the idea of a makerspace. And then you have to have it in a place where people are comfortable to coming from all ages and feel comfortable coming in and actually working together with some ideas. So that, and actually the retail grant, JL had brought up. And then I remembered I was at coffee shop and ran into you and Scott and went, okay, wait, there is a market for this. So you helped with that whole retail grant. Where can the city be involved in on that? We have to provide, we have zoning, but we don't want to get too restrictive on zoning, of where you can and what you can do things, because you want the creativity of the people, to do it. Our job is to make sure there's plenty of space available. That's what we have to do. And then it's up to the community to create what needs to be created. We can get in and do a building that's kind of a kickstart building. But if we get too far into that, where we're getting into business owners' business, we get in trouble with the government, or we get in trouble as the government doing that. And I don't think the government's really good at it either. So we need to find that right area that we can help with it, but we're not necessarily telling business owners what they can or can't do. So it's not a weird question, it's not a bad question, it's a tough question, and that we'll have to work on. It is one thing that I wrote down is that space is important. And we don't have standards in ordinance for much. I mean, we use the International Building Code, we have our historic districts, but we don't tell people too much exactly, okay, if you're going to have a store downtown and you're going to redo it, you have to do it to this level, or you can't use this siding, you can use this siding. A lot of communities do. It's something that needs to be looked at, but we don't have any strict standards. That's a little bit of the South Dakota way. We don't like to tell other people what to do with their property. And if that's something that's important to the community with the downtown, we've had a resurgence of downtown, and I'll go back to what does the city do? They make sure there's good infrastructure, they make sure there's good sidewalks, we got to make sure it looks nice. You know, that was the things we really can work on, but we need the property owners to come together and say, this is what we would like. And a good way of doing that, and that was explored, I think, Doris, was it while you were on council? 2003 is a bid district. And there it's going to cost, you know, there is a cost to that. And so we'd have to figure that out. But what you do is, the best thing to do, and I probably shouldn't say this too loud, is when you get a group together, you get funds together, come to the city and say, hey, we did this, what are you going to do in funds? Because that's a tough argument to go against, is when a group of people say, we're in for X. You know, what are you guys in for? This was really interesting, and I think we got invited as a city. I just happen to be the mayor that it's policymakers that we're looking for. Got invited to the Mayor's Conference on Entrepreneurialism, and there were a little over 100 people, if I remember right, that were at this conference. You would have thought by the layout of it that it was for 1,000 people. I mean, it was incredible, the thought that was put into this. This wasn't just a ragtag group they put together. That conference really had three major items. And the first had to do with how should the policy going forward for economic development, what should that policy be? That's really what they're trying to affect. That's what they do as an organization. And they were pointing to entrepreneurialism is where it's at. Starting new businesses is where it's at. They had a lot of great data showing that we're in a decline in that place. And so that was the main focus of the discussion. The second had to do with, what's that article? I shared it with JL. Creative class was weaved all the way through it. JL, what was the second item? I shared that with you just recently. Yeah, with Lincoln. What was the second item? Remember I shared that with you out of Forbes magazine, the Kaufman? Do you remember what the second item was? Yeah. You know what? Let me email that article out. The third had to do with welcoming immigrants into your community. And just because where we're at, that's something that we don't necessarily have as a major focus, but we really need to look at. I'm sorry I can't remember the second one. But here's yeah, we'll send it out. Here is the most important thing I learned. And it's just one little quip that happened. The person that was responsible for their makers area, which I can't remember, the innovative something that they called it, he was up on a board and they were talking questions. And he told this story. He said, I went to help my sister out at art class. She teaches art, probably at I'm guessing at like the college level. So he went to talk to this class because he's a mechanical engineer with a metallurgy background. Okay, so he understood metals, he understood welding, those kind of things, which are very important to a lot of artists. And so he said, here I was in that room, and I realized all of them could weld better than I could. And it really made the good point of you got to intersect arts with, arts and design with making products. And so that was probably the most important thing that I actually learned out of it, which was just one little part. But it's what brought about this concept that we need a good place, that we can bring design and arts together with those that are trying to start a business. So that's probably the most important thing I learned. And we'll send out kind of the three-piece recap of that so everybody can hear and see it.